What is going on, guys? DragonTamerBlayde here, back to some more Elder Scrolls Legends, and today's video is going to be kind of a 2-for-1 because we're going to be talking about the Festival of Madness deal. It's for the next 2 days. So I wanted to talk about it as well as some more in-depth things. So as you can see, there's the Isle of Madness sneak peek pack. 3 copies of a brand new card, and you can get 8 packs, 4 of each, along with it. The value is fine. I won't be buying it because it's just getting too expensive for little sneak peeks at Isle of Madness. But we are going to go ahead and talk about the cards that have been revealed. There are 6 new cards from Isle of Madness that we got announced for us today. So let's go ahead and take a look. First thing, this is the Madness Beckons card. This is the 2,000 gold card that you'll be getting. Put a random Isle of Madness card into your hand. And these are the 6 cards right here. Let's go ahead and talk about them all. First one we're going to talk about is Fortress Guard. 4 cost, 3/4 with Guard, and summon effect. You may discard a card to summon a 2/2 Colovian Trooper with Guard in the other lane. I want to start by saying I don't think this is a bad card. There's some early game synergy with Imperial Reinforcements for Marked Man. The Steel Dagger from, what's her name? Crowned Quartermaster. Just 0-cost cards in general, or maybe a control card you don't need against a control opponent, whatever. Like, there's synergy with needing to discard, or if there ever winds up being more graveyard synergy, you could discard a fat card that you want to res later on, and, you know, get a 2/2 Colovian Trooper out of it. So there is some synergy here. And I think that this card could be a solid card if graveyard decks besides that one Rage Warrior ever kind of catch on as more of a thing. They become more viable to get more support, more tools, whatever. I think Fortress Guard can be a good card in those decks. Or B, if there's kind of been an underlying push, I don't know if it's from the community or the developers, it seems like the developers have been pushing it as well, to kind of make Guard spell sword a thing. It hasn't been a thing yet, but if it ever does become a thing, Fortress Guard will be a very good card in that kind of deck. Buffing up 2 guards, you know, there's that one card, I think it's actually a blue card, that can give all of your guards plus, no, it's a purple card, I think. Give all your guards +1/+2 or something like that. I think it's 5 cost as well, so that would be a natural curve after this one. So stuff like that does play well with it. I think the biggest issue facing Fortress Guard is, this is already an issue in yellow, there's so many good 4-drops. I'm going to rattle off a few. Hive Defender, Cloud Rest Illusionist, Dawnbreaker, Black Dragon. If you're playing Spellsword, you have Emperor's Guard. You also have Edict of Azura and Spellsword. That's just off the top of my head, naming some of the most popular 4-drops. 4 is, in my opinion, and it's probably a fact, the most crowded and most difficult slot to choose when building a deck that has yellow creatures, or just yellow as an attribute. 4 can be the hardest slot to decide because there's so many excellent cards in that slot. So I think Fortress Guard will kind of just get pushed out because of the slot that it falls into. If this was like a 3-cost 2/3 or something like that had this effect, or even like a 3-cost 3/3 with this effect, I think it has better odds. 4, I think it just doesn't make the cut outside of, like I said, potentially Guard Spellsword. I guess not to be ignored is the fact that this is a card that summons 2 attributes. So this is a yellow that also summons a purple. So this could potentially come into play for Unite the Houses decks at some point. Although most Unite the Houses decks that have a decent win rate rely on Jarl Balgruuf, which does the same thing as this but also summons a red. But I guess this could be an alternate win condition. If you can't draw your Balgruuf, you can get this done in a different way. Or maybe some other Unite deck comes along down the line. Maybe even just a 2-card deck to make it more consistent. And maybe Fortress Guard makes the cut. On top of that, we could also mention that Madness Beckons is probably one of the best Unite the Houses enablers in the game. Being neutral, any Unite deck can run it. You have a 1 in 6 chance of getting the exact color you need if you need only 1. And you can run it 3 times. There's no downside, being that it's 1 Magicka and it draws you a card so it replaces itself. There's really no downside. Actually, I kind of hope that they get rid of this card at some point, although that would feel kind of shitty since you paid gold or cash for this card. But I hope that at some point they just get rid of this card, because it's cards like this that are going to make Unite too consistent to be fair. And that's always been my worry with Unite, and all of those other neutral cards. You guys know how I feel about neutral win conditions. Unite gets ignored because it's kind of a meme at this point, but it's dangerous. It is on the borderline. Bad things could happen. But besides Madness Beckons, that's Fortress Guard. Let's go ahead and talk about Grummite Magus. 7 cost, 5/5. It has the ability, it also has Guard, and summon. Your opponent discards their highest cost action in their hand. So, the obvious thing you guys are probably saying is, Blade, you hate conscription. You should be happy. This kills conscription. And on some level, I guess. I'd rather them have something like this than just keep ignoring that conscription is an obnoxious card. The problem is, and a similar or I guess a parallel to draw would be to, what was it? Hallowed Death Priest? Is that the 5 cost 3/5 that mummifies a creature? That card got popular and got released back when Parthenax was one of the best late games in the game. And again, neutral card, generates a ton of value, is kind of stupid. So what do? They release a card. I'm not saying that Death Priest was just to target Parthenax, but it was just during this time frame of the game. They release a card that kind of more or less counters that strategy. But there's a couple issues I have with that. A, Death Priest is not a great card. Doesn't see play in a lot of decks. It's just kind of there. And I mean, Parthenax isn't as popular anymore anyway, so it's not as powerful. But it just never was really good enough anyway, besides only to try and slow down Parthenax. B, those types of cards are incredibly unfun. Even if I'm not running a Parth deck, or in this case a Conscription deck, I could be running something silly like Smuggler's Hall, or I don't know, Justin running Char's Breeding Pit, or Cliff Racer's Onslaught, or any number of other quote-unquote fun actions. Singleton decks running Siege. There's so many other decks that rely on these high-cost actions that aren't broken cards that get absolutely clobbered and murdered by this card. And you're going to see this card, you're going to see people running this in aggro decks, although a lot of people may say it doesn't belong. You're going to see people running this deck in this card in all sorts of decks, and it's going to come down, and if you're playing a Conscription deck, it's not going to feel good to lose to this card. And if you're playing any other of those decks that I mentioned that need these high-cost actions to be good, it's going to feel even worse to lose to this card, because this card is almost purely being released to target Conscription, even though the devs already said Conscription is fine. And again, this is going to be another one of those cards that absolutely murders a bunch of fun decks as a result. I don't think this card is particularly great either, and I'm hoping this card sees no play, despite the fact that I hate Conscription, because I don't think we can afford any more of these cards that are killing fun decks. The Skulk nerf already hurt a lot, although it didn't absolutely murder those decks. The Skulk nerf hurt. Leaving Conscription how it is hurt a lot of fun decks, and now Grummite Magus is going to hurt fun decks even more. It actually kind of scares me for the future of the game to see fun decks repeatedly get stomped on in a half-hearted attempt to answer broken cards that the devs don't feel are broken, so they're trying to leave the same, but also giving us hard counters. I don't know. I hate cards like this. I think this is lazy design. I think this is Hearthstone design, and I understand that Direwolf Digital made this whole set, so this isn't Sparky's set, but the game is in Sparky's hands. They have the power to rebalance or change these cards before the set came out, so they're just as responsible as Direwolf Digital is at this point. I hate this card. I think it's poor design. I think it's lazy design. I hate cards like this. I'm not going to keep griping on it, but I hate cards like this. The next card is Icy Shambles. I like this card a lot, actually. 4 cost 2/3 obviously is a little bit understated. It is Skeleton Synergy, so we're going to be definitely trying some Skeleton Sorcerer at some point. But it has the ability Shackle creatures that are damaged by Icy Shambles, and also summon effect deal 2 damage to a creature. So this is Ash Servant becoming playable, I guess. Ash Servant's a 4 cost 2/2 with just a summon effect. Icy Shambles gets 1 more health, and it gets the ability to shackle any creatures. So you figure, worst case scenario, you use Icy Shambles summon effect. You either kill something or shackle something. more than likely you're probably going to be killing something, but, you know, occasionally you'll use it for the shackle. And then it has a weak stat line, but it'll trade into something, and it'll probably die, and it probably won't kill the opposing creature, but you'll get a second shackle. So that's 2 shackles and a 2/3 for 4. That's pretty solid, and that's not counting things like Sword of the Inferno, which will shackle itself, but also get another shackle, or Quicksilver Crossbow. Archer's Gambit and Dagoth can allow this card to shackle more. So Shackle Assassin and other fun cards or fun decks like that. What's it called? Staff of Sparks can shackle entire lanes. So this card enables a lot of fun things. This card also is a bit scary. You're going to see slower blue decks have another card that kind of prolongs games even more. So for things like Control Assassin, which doesn't exist, this would be a solid tool, or Control Mage, this would be a solid tool. But where I'm most scared of this card is Tribunal and Telvanni. Those card decks already have tons of amazing cards and amazing things that prolong the game and answer their faster opponents. And Icy Shambles is just another excellent card to slam into those decks. I don't know if it eventually makes the cut, but 2 of our best decks in the game are getting an amazing tool that could potentially even prolong the games even more. So I love this card a lot. I'm excited to play with this card, but this card also kind of makes me nervous. Again, just because of the presence of those 3-color decks that are going to be getting even better as a result of it. Next card, as you can see here, is Dark Seducer. 8 cost 7/7 Daedra with Drain and Guard. And Dark Seducer drains on both turns. So this is the first card in the game. I guess second card in the game. A lot of people online have been comparing it to Auroran Sentry, which is an 8 cost 5/7 with Guard and Willpower. That card's text is, whenever you get dealt damage to that creature, you heal for that much. And it may seem like those effects are the same, but there's some slight differentiation there. So for Dark Seducer, if I trade in a 1-attack creature into it, you're healing for 7 no matter what. So obviously Dark Seducer has better attack, so edge to Dark Seducer in that front. Anything that attacks Dark Seducer with 6 attack or below, Dark Seducer is the better card between Seducer and Auroran Sentry. Because anything 6 attack or below, Dark Seducer will still heal for 7 because it has 7 attack. The drain on Dark Seducer takes this number into account. Auroran Sentry, well, if they get hit for 7, they're a wash. They're equally good. I guess depending on the attack of what's trading into it is what would factor who wins that fight. But for lack of a better comparison, we'll call it a wash at 7 damage incoming. And then 8 damage incoming or more, Auroran Sentry is the better card. So that's kind of where Auroran Sentry can shine, is if you have a 100/100 in your lane, and you trade into my Auroran Sentry, I heal for 100 damage, whereas Dark Seducer would only be 7. So most situations, I would say probably 70 to 80% of the time, Dark Seducer is probably going to be the better card on paper and in practice. But it's not to say that it's just strictly better than Auroran Sentry. There are, admittedly, fringe cases where Auroran Sentry would be better. Dark Seducer is also just really good for answering aggro decks. I think even better than Auroran Sentry is on that front as well. So next card we got is Crazed Hunger. 2 cost 0/2 Daedra with Charge, and Crazed Hunger has +2/+0 on your turn. I like this card. It's a pretty aggressive card with being a 2 cost 2/2 Charge, but it's not an aggressive card without a downside. So you play this card because you get instant 2 damage, which is obviously good if you're an aggressive deck. But you also have the downside versus a lot of other aggressive cards where when the turn flips and it's my turn to answer your aggressive play, I can trade into Crazed Hunger no problem without losing my board presence. So this is one of those things that's really meant for push and every point of damage counting or combos, or I guess even in the off deck of Conscription, but mostly you're going to be using this in aggressive decks, I think. And also for green decks, I think Justin mentioned this on Twitter, some decks are probably and potentially going to run this card as like a 2 cost Firebolt for green. Obviously Firebolt's a better card, but decks that are running green and don't have like access to blue can sometimes struggle with removal, or I guess lower cost removal. So like something like, I don't know, something like Monk that doesn't run Execute or something like that. Getting to the late game, Crazed Hunger can be pretty solid, or even a creature-based control deck. Off the top of my head, Scout has no ways to really remove things early on besides guards, so Crazed Hunger can act as a pseudo removal spell on that front. So I like this card a lot, actually. I think this is probably one of the better put together cards of the group. I really don't have much negative to say about the card. If anything, it's probably potentially a little bit weak, but I can see a lot of decks like a Charge Archer or something like that shining through with this card. And the final card we've got is Giant Chicken, 7-cost 5/5 beast. With Last Gasp, fill this lane with 1/1 confused villagers. So this is awesome to get from the zoo lane. It's honestly not bad in a token deck, as like a top end card, I guess. It's not great in those kinds of decks, but it's not bad either. This card's just kind of interesting, because Prize Chicken sucked, because it was a 0/1. You would have to sacrifice it yourself, either with Betray or filling your lane, just to get 4 1/1s, and the card already cost 4. So it was kind of garbage. This card, while still understated, it's a 7-cost 5/5, so your opponent can't just leave it, and when they remove it, you get a lane full of these 1/1s in the end. So you still have an upside to playing Giant Chicken. So in total, you get 9/9 worth of stats for 7. This card has a couple different things that are going to face it for seeing play. Obviously, the cost to stat ratio is a little tough, so that could prevent it from seeing some play, as well as the effect being a Last Gasp means this card can be silenced, this card can be cast into time, there's a lot of different ways to get around this Last Gasp, which would make this card a pretty bad 7-drop, and it doesn't do anything immediately when it hits the board, so it's kind of rough on that front. That being said, though, the meme potential with this card is pretty high. The card is interesting, and it can be annoying in the right situations. It's like sufficiently sticky that you're not going to really want to see it. So I at least think it has more potential than Prize Chicken, although that's not saying much. But this card does have some potential. So I'm kind of excited to see what happens with that. So yeah, 6 new cards revealed, 1 in each attribute. And you're getting the new Madness Beckons card, which I hope gets deleted as soon as Isle of Madness gets released. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down below of the cards. Let me know if you guys agree with my opinions, if you think I'm way off or way wrong. Let's get that discussion going on down below in the comments section. But yeah, that's going to be it for now, guys. As always, thank you all very much for watching. I'm DragonTamerBlayde, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.